메일이 어느 정도 발생하게 되었으면 생각하는데 그 메일이 다음에 방법이 이 아이들은 모르는 노래 알아요.
음악을 안 듣는다고 봐야겠다.
옛날 거 제 말은 제네레이션
아니 지금도 앨범 짜는
주로 활동하던 게 90년대.
그죠. 보이스가 뭐였지? 할렘 디자인 이런 거
아, 그건 더 이제
아니.
제일 이런 노래 고 웨스트.
중요한 건 봤어 그 사이에 용진이라고 안 보죠?
한 2분 정도.
지난번보다는 좀
오늘 화요일이라서 원래는 목요일인데 그 화요일 날 이렇게 스케줄 부탁드려요. 그래서 저기 외국인들이 저기 오래 앉아있어요. 얼굴을 보면 하나도 어디 가서 모르겠는데 타이완 우리나라 누구라
사람들이 없는
마크에 대해서 알아봤는데 마크요. Maybe since today is a Tuesday, I think that a lot of students. Okay, I think I have to start for the colloquium. Today, I bring also very honored and new professors from Kyonggi University. His name is Professor Kyung Wook. I believe that some of you are not the first year of the student. You remember him, right? He was here last semester too. Thanks to him because he really come here several times and then here to let us really see some new light. And then I heard that he also was a lecturer in the Conchu Cafe. And then in the AIK he also do the series of lecture. So he has a lot of lecture things to tell you about. So today's also lecture is very interesting. East and West. I hope you enjoy it. So give him a big hand, Professor Kyung Wook Seo. To introduce yourself or 어디 나왔고?
my profile.
Yeah.
I got a bachelor's degree from Korea University, and then I got a master's from Georgia Tech in the United States, and a PhD from University College London in UK. So I had a good chance to experience many different parts of the world. So today's topic is something related to my past experience. So would you prefer to listen to this lecture in English, entirely in English? Well, or you want me to combine Korean and English? Okay, let's do this. I'll go very slow and clear in international English accent. So if you have any questions or if you're confused about what I'm saying, you can just interrupt and say, would you briefly explain it in Korean, okay? Don't be bothered to raise that interruption. my topic today is East and West. So I'm going to compare the different culture of Eastern, the European culture, which can be represented by the word West, and East, which include the Asian, especially Far Eastern part of the world. The major field is morphology. So what I learned from my PhD years is to analyze the form of architecture. So that's my major subject. But today it's a little bit deviated from that major topic. So I'm going to introduce some anthropological issues about the worldview and architectural space of East and West. Okay, let me start. Well, I've been wondering, what does that mean, East and West, to us and to European people? So this chart shows you how you can relate the term into this geographical area. Okay, when we say in Korean, 동양, 서양, that's what we call, yeah, the Western culture and Eastern culture, 서양, 동양. But actually that term was originated from China. Many years ago, hundreds of years ago, the Chinese people here try to divide the ocean into two by this red line. So that seems to be the middle of the Chinese world, and they just put it down towards the downward to the globe, and then the right side of their country there's an ocean which is called 소서양. It's a small western ocean. That's what they call it. And this part, small eastern ocean, which is 소동양. And then somewhere far away from small western ocean exists the big western ocean. That is called 대서양, which we still use this term, 대서양, which is the Atlantic Ocean nowadays. Right? Okay, so when you go further to the east, this part of the Pacific Ocean is called Big Eastern Ocean. So we still use the Eastern Sea or the Small Eastern Ocean. So this kind of terms were originated from old-time China. Okay? And very interesting thing is, in the European continent, they use somewhat different terms. When they say East, the East, Eastern world, that means somewhere, some region which exists on the eastern part of their Europe. So, even Turkey belongs to the east in the term east. Okay. So when they say call east, east includes all these parts, including Asia and these Arabian countries as well. So it's a different term. 서양, 동양, and East and West has been originated from the different culture, and it doesn't match at all. Okay. What I'm gonna say East and West today. I'm going to concentrate on the Far Eastern countries of Japan, Korea, and China. Okay, East is a very general and broad term, as I told you before. But today, when I say East, we are rather concentrating on these small areas. And when I say West today, it's rather concentrated on the Anglo-Saxon area. But you can broaden the term to include the general European culture or general Asian culture. Okay, that's the prescription of what I'm going to tell you today. Okay, now I'm going to begin to compare the two different cultures, and then I lead that discussion into the architectural space at the end. I brought two passports. Okay, this passport is the one of An Chang-ho, the very famous Korean patriot. So this passport was issued in 1876. And this one is Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche's passport, which was issued in No. Anchang's passport was 1902, and Nietzsche's passport was issued in 1876. So there is not much difference in time period. But when you begin to compare these two passports, there is very interesting difference in them. First, in Anchang's passport, you can see 보임. It means guarantor, somebody who can guarantee you. So for the Asian people, to identify yourself, you need somebody to guarantee you. So you cannot stand alone. You need somebody who is strongly related to you. But let's look at the passport of Nietzsche. There is nothing like guarantor or somebody or family member whatsoever. Here you got a very precise description of what he looks like. So well, I don't read these foreign letters, but here you can see there's a scars and some marks or what kinds of very strong, unique points in his face. So that's what describes his passport. Okay, so you got a hint now. In Asian culture or in Eastern culture, you define yourself by relating yourself to others. But in Western culture, well, the prescription or description of yourself is enough to identify yourself. Okay, this is the architectural drawing of a famous architect called Aldo Rossi. This drawing was made in 1971. And it was very controversial and became very famous and unique drawing of an architect. The reason is, normally, there are many different types of architectural plan, like plan, elevation, perspective, all different kinds of drawing. But in this drawing, several types of drawings are put together into a single frame. For example, you see this is the side plan, something you look down from the air. But if you look carefully, here you see the elevation, something you see from the ground, looking at the facade of a building. And you see the plan here, and this is the facade elevation. This is the plan, and you see again here the elevation. So everything is mixed. So that was a kind of shock to Western culture. How can you make an architectural drawing like this, combining all different types of drawing in a single frame? So it was a sensation, and that's one of the reasons he became a famous architect in Europe and in America. It was in the 20th century. But if you look at this drawing, it was wooden sculpted, and then they made a wooden frame and then put an ink on it, and then you stick it on the paper and you get this drawing. It was made in 1755. Sosaewon, well, it's a famous place in Korea. And you see there is a very strange mixture of all different types of drawing. For example, you see the trees like this, all the different trees. They have a different direction. So it doesn't make sense in modern eyes. So you see the building here, it's a standing right elevation, but you got different angles like these trees and everything. The walls, they are facing different directions. So we can now realize that kind of mixed drawing effect has been already existed in Korea long time ago. And it's just like China, Japan, Korea. Most of the Asian countries share this type of mixed effect in drawing. This is called the Poitinger map. It was drawn in the 4th century in Roma, and then somebody made a copy in the 12th or 13th century. It's a kind of route map for the Romans to find out some place they've never been to. So you see the routes and the buildings and the hills and the trees. But the interesting thing is they used 2 different types of drawing technique. It's an elevation, right? But some important buildings were represented by the 3-dimensional drawing technique, which is called elevation oblique. It's a kind of a simple type of perspective. So it seems to me very precise, and well, it doesn't look awkward to the modern eyes. Now we turn to the Korean map, which was drawn in 17th century. It's a surrounding wall of Seoul. Yeah? And you see the streets, and there's a palace, small and big palaces, and you see a lot of smaller buildings. So the representation of buildings themselves are very similar, but there's one unique difference. Well, look at this building. It is upside down. So it's reversed. Here you see the roof is facing eastward. Some buildings are downwards, all different. Why is that happening? The single point perspective doesn't have meaning when we start to look at the old drawings in Asia, especially in eastern part of the Asia. So it's a very subjective representation of the world. The Eastern Asian people believe, well, there's no single and unmoving point of view that can penetrate all the whole world phenomenon. Okay, let's talk about the interpretation of substance in the East and the West. Well, I quoted 2 famous scholars, Einstein and here Hermann Weyl, the mathematician. Albert Einstein said the substance or object is something that is condensed in a limited small area. That we call substance. In the new physics, you cannot distinguish between the field and the substance. That's what he said. Well, it's not very far away. It's just 100 and some decades ago. That's a new finding in the Western country. And Hermann Weyl also said, well, it's the same word. When there's a very strong energy condensed in a small spot, that makes the substance or object. That's what he said. Okay, now think about the Eastern philosophy. Everyone in Asian countries would recognize this Chinese character, Qi or Qi, well, whatever it is called. We know it is some kind of energy, spirit, vigor, vitality. It's hard to translate it into a single term in English. AD 1020, some scholar mentioned when the energy is condensed, that makes the very solid object, which we call goche in Korean. And when it's dispersed, it is invisible. So you cannot say, when there is a thing, you cannot say, oh, there exists something, and, well, when it's not visible, you cannot say, oh, there is nothing existing. So that's what he said. And there's another word from the Buddhist philosophy, AD 649. And this word means form is emptiness, and the very emptiness is form. It's a very contradicting word, but what it says is, well, there's no difference between something we can touch and something we cannot touch. So it's not a scientific observation, but from a very long time ago, Eastern philosophy has acknowledged that there is no strong division between the form and emptiness. The Oriental medicine or Oriental medical system is based on this kind of philosophy. So everything is related to everything else. So if your bottom hurts, or if your any part of your body hurts, you can cure that symptom by stimulating the bottom of your feet. So it's not translated as a scientific medication in the Western countries, but in Asia, people believe that, and it works actually. When you have a bad digestion, 그 손을 이렇게 따잖아요. 피 나면은 체한 게 낫잖아요, 이렇게. 이거는 그 서양 사람들이 볼 때는 미신이거든요. 말도 안 되는 아무런 과학적인 이 논문이 없어요 거기에 대해서. 하지만 손을 따면 검은 피가 나오고 낫는다는 걸 우리는 알잖아요. 그래서 세상의 모든 건 서로 연관이 되어 있다는 것을 우리는 알지만 그 서양 사람들은 굉장히 오랫동안 최근까지도 그것의 과학적인 어떤 의미를 인정하지 않았죠. It's just the first picture I just put into the slides to make some rest. It's a breathing time for me. Okay, that's the very conclusive part of this lecture. So everything we have to talk about, everything we have to know today is included in this chart. So the East, especially the Far East, is a wet rice solution. We got a wet rice solution, and we have been made a dense permanent settlement. Our culture is based on the Confucianism and collectivism, and most importantly, everything is related. That's the basic and most fundamental philosophy of Asian countries, especially the Far East. And the West Anglo-Saxon culture is based on the nomadic culture and stock breeding, and it's some kind of mobile society, and they use furniture. And it is based on individualism, and the key words in this culture is everything should be categorized. So when you say everything is related, you can think of some examples I have mentioned before, and everything should be categorized can be also related to the all the philosophies and cultural phenomena that happen in the West. When everything is related, people begin to worry about others' life, and we think about others' viewpoint more importantly than ours. For example, you guys remember the 조승희? Nobody remember that? Well, he was a Korean immigrant, and in Virginia Tech, many years ago, actually 7 or 6 years ago, he killed maybe 17 people inside the Virginia Tech campus. And the problem is, he was a Korean immigrant. That really bothered us, right? Unfortunately, at the time, I was interviewing one American university. I applied as a professor job, so I went to the United States to have an interview. So just a week before my interview, that accident happened. So I was worried. I was so concerned. the fact that Korean immigrants killed many innocent American people would in fact influence my interview. So I would fail to get a job. Actually, I failed, but against my wariness, that was not the reason. And many American professors I met said that, oh, he was a Korean immigrant, but I don't understand why you're bothering about that. You wouldn't be sorry about, he is a Korean. Rather, we would feel very sorry to you because we spoiled his character, his temper in the United States. That's our fault, not yours. That's what he said. So I was a little bit surprised. Okay, they see that the individual's bad behavior belongs to him, not to the whole culture in general. Anyway, these words are two key words you have to remember today. Everything is related in Eastern Asian culture, and everything should be categorized in Western, especially Anglo-Saxon culture. So that is reflected in every facet of life. In language, for example, because if you want to represent the relation between different things, you need to use verb, right? 동사. 함께하다, 마시다, 가다, 오다. Well, all the verbs include the meaning of the relationship between separate parts, right? But in Anglo-Saxon language, to make everything be categorized, you need to develop many nouns. So in English, for example, they have a bunch of nouns which don't exist in Korean words. Let me take an example. We go to a bar and started to drink. The first round is finished. And then when you go to the second round, 2차를 가고 싶다면 술을 마시다가 더 마실래? 이렇게 얘기하죠. 더 마실래. So it's a very bird-centered language. You don't need to mention 술. 술 더 마실래? Nobody say that. Wanna drink more? That's what they say. We exclude the noun. That's for sure, something. And then in American culture or in European culture, when you want to go to the second round, 2차, nobody say, will you drink? Nobody say the verb. Instead, they would say more alcohol, more coffee, some tea. It's very noun-centered language. So the noun is something that can be utilized to make everything clearly divided and categorized. This is from the Richard Nisbet's famous book, which is called Geography of Thought. And I always relate to this questionnaire to the audience. Okay, don't think too seriously. 요거를 대답을 한번 해주시고 그 다음에 하시는 일을 계속 하시면 돼요. 여기 소가 있는데 여기 풀이 있고 여기 닭이 있거든요. The cow and the how do you call it? Plant, herb, whatever. This is something you see. And then there's a chicken. Okay, would you relate the cow to this one or this one? This is A or B? Okay. If you want to relate cow to A, raise your hand. B. Okay, well, I missed your European students or Anglo-Saxon people. That might, mix the answers. Well, most of you answered the cow is related to fruit, herb, plant, whatever. And then when I do the same questionnaire in UK, especially in London, and in America, the Western people, especially those from or those who originated from the European continent answer that the cow should be related to chicken. That's what they believe. But in Japan, China, Korea, people will answer, okay, this should be directly related to this one. Why is that? So that's the point of my argument. We are globalized civilians. We are international citizens now, using the iPhone and log on to Facebook, do pretty much the same thing. But we are different species. That's my argument. We are different. We are not the same human, even in the 21st century. Why is that? Okay, there was a second question. Don't think too serious, okay? That will spoil my, data. Okay, there's a flower. This is a group 1, and this is group 2. Think about which group this flower should belong to. Okay, raise your hand. No, okay. A little bit complicated. I'll give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this flower should belong to group 1. Raise your hand. Group 2. Okay. Well, I might say Seonjung and Dahong have some Anglo-Saxon DNA inside of you, because my intention of this question is that we all raise hand here in group 1. But the reason is, if I say the same question to the Western people, they raise hand towards group 2, because they know if something should belong to some group, every requirement should be satisfied. And if you should put this flower into this group, every members of the group should share the single element, but there's no single element that can be shared by this group. Okay, well, I can understand you put this flower here because it has a very wide leaf, and they have leaves, right? Majority of them. But here, majority of the flowers don't have the white leaf. So, in this culture, especially in Korea, you can, you don't need to be very strict. How can I say? Well, there's some tolerance here. 봐준다고 하잖아요. 선생님, 무슨 일이 있어가지고 어제 시험을 못 봤어요. Teacher, I'm sorry, I had a headache last night, so I couldn't attend the exam. So if I were the Western professor, I would not listen to him. Well, that's your problem. But here, that makes my heart broken. Oh, you had a problem. How can I help you? We need to start to think about this, some tolerance or some cordial feeling, sympathy. So I think that's the kind of reason that makes people to put this flower into this group. Well, even though there's an exception, it should be okay. But for the strong categorizing people of the West, they wouldn't allow it. Okay, there's an exception, so it doesn't belong to this group. Here, there's a very thick and straight, what is that? How do you, stem? Yeah, very strong and thick stems here. So it has the same stem, so it should belong here. So that divides the different cultural groups. But it's very interesting. I, use these questions everywhere I go. I got a very similar results like this. Okay, there's one more. This picture was shown in the EBS TV program in Korea. Okay, there are 5 friends, and he's standing in front. He's smiling. Yeah. Does he look happy? If they ask you a question, most of the people regardless of East and West, they all say, okay, he looks happy. But look at the difference. The next picture. You see the difference. So just showing the second picture and ask the same question. Does he look happy? If anyone feel he's happy, raise your hand. Oh my God. You just screwed up my data. Most of the Eastern Asian people say he doesn't look happy because in the background they look very annoyed or angry. Because of that background, people say he doesn't look happy. Instead, he looks like he did some very bad mistake or he did something wrong to his friend. So it's not a happy smile. It's a very mean and very bad smile. That's the answer in Asian countries. But in Europe and in America, people simply keep saying he looks happy because he's happy. It doesn't matter if they are happy or not. They don't look at the background, they don't look at the relations, they just look straight at the target point. So that's their philosophy. That's their approach to everything. Science, academics, and everything. Okay, I rambled enough, and I'm going to go into the architectural space and architectural form. But considering you're not an architectural student, I'll try to just make it simple and go over very fast, not to make you bored. Do I have 1 hour for the presentation? 1 시간. This is the traditional English house in the Middle Age. People call that hall and parlor house. Yeah. So this is the hall where all the everyday activities happen. Hall and parlor here is some kind of a very special room designated for the sleeping or retreat of the head of a family. So the very higher person, or father and mother, for example, can stay here, and all the other members belong to the hall. They eat, sleep, drink, and raise many, 가축이 뭐죠? Cat. So they all kinds of jobs here. So this is a very dirty place. Very, very dirty. They even pour the urinals and the dung, whatever. All kinds of dirty things are just poured on the floor. So after a while, it becomes more and more hardened, and then they put cut straw or all kinds of plant, seed, whatever, to make it hardened. And then it becomes many different layers. So it's a very kind of dirty place that is written in the history of Western housing culture. So, people needed some kind of furniture because the floor is very dirty. They need a chair, bed, and sometimes high heel, some shoes. So that's the general, historical saying in this culture. Anyway, that is called hall and parlor house, and the space is strictly divided into these two groups. And as time flows, you see the different combination of spaces. But what is still maintaining is the strong categorization of space. And then hall and parlor house has been exported to the new continent, America. So the American early immigrants adopted the English hall and parlor house system, and then they developed that, and all different combination has emerged. But what is still existing is the strong categorization of space. This is the whole of the Western houses. Looking at the general spatial plan of Western countries, you can find a very interesting point. From the street, there's a front yard, and then house, and then backyard. So it doesn't matter your house is looking at the west, east, north, south, it doesn't really matter. They try to follow the artificial structure like streets. So the facade is facing the streets. So this is south, this is north, but all the facade just conforms to the street structure. And there is a very public street and a semi-public front yard and the building or housing and the backyard. So you go into the private from public gradually. So the space is divided very strictly from the public to the private. So very much hierarchical and spatially very strongly categorized. This is UK. You see, this is called terraced house. I don't know the reason why they call it terraced house, but generally they call it terraced house. So it's everywhere, every city in UK. Actually, maybe you have seen this type of houses in Billy Elliot, the famous movie. Here again, even though they got a smaller scale housing, you see the street, and there's a very tiny little front yard, and the building, and the backyard. So the order of space, or the ordering of spatial division follows the same rule. From the public towards private. From the street facing the main street, all the facade is conforming to the town grid. Now think about the houses in Korea. This is the drawing in the late 19th century by American painter Hubert Goss. You see many houses, I think this is I guess. Is it 청와대? No, I don't think that. Anyway, so if you look at the arrangement of houses, you cannot find any rule. There's a street, and the main gate follows the flow of the street, but the main building does not follow the orientation of the street. Rather, in this culture, we follow the direction of sun, river, or backing mountain. So the streets running right in front of your house doesn't mean anything to you. You orient your house towards something else. Maybe the nature, or geodesy, philosophy, or feng shui, whatever. This is another rural town in Korea. You see the same type of the result. You see the buildings are facing all different directions. So there's no guideline like the Western houses. This is Japanese houses. They are dominantly facing south rather than street. There's actually a research by a Japanese woman, Ojaki, and she said Anglo-Saxon houses are dominantly facing streets with their facades, while Japanese houses are dominantly facing south. I got the same observation from the Eastern Asian countries. There is a spatial overlap in Eastern countries. Well, this is one of my favorite picture by the most famous photographer, Byung-woo. And it's one building inside the Changdeok Palace in Seoul. Very beautiful. So in summer, we raise up the door like this so that you make the air flow from the back to the front. So very interesting. You can simply see the air flowing by these, hard structure. The space is not strictly divided, but rather it overlaps. Let's think about the entrance. This is a Swedish home. Have you noticed that it's not only us? 한국 사람만 현관에서 신발 벗는 거 아닌 거 아시죠? There are many parts of the world that has the same custom of removing shoes in front of the house. Southeast Asia, South Asia, and in many Islamic countries. Do you remove shoes before you enter the house?
Yeah, in the front, right. You are putting it in front of the door.
Okay, anyway, you remove it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Sweden. Even in Europe, they remove shoes before they go into. So it's a wrong idea that it's only us who remove shoes. So in every culture, the inside and outside is faced by this entrance hole. So it's a very basic phenomenon. So many people call that this entrance hole is an ambiguous space. There are a bunch of anthropological research dealing with entrance hole. It's an ambiguous space, and there is some tension of inside and outside, all kinds of things. So what their research suggests is because the entrance hole is on the edge of boundary, it makes some kind of tension between the inside and outside. So you need some kind of ceremony or some taboo on it. For example, the threshold. There was a threshold in this boundary zone in every houses all around the world, and stepping on the threshold is a taboo in most of the countries. In Europe, in Asia, everywhere. No, don't step on the threshold. That's a taboo. So it's a very dangerous and very ambiguous zone. But no entrance hole can be compared to the entrance hole in Korea or in Japan or some parts of China, because it's very strongly dividing the inside and outside, unlike other European countries. Let me take an example. The line A is the boundary between outside and inside in European countries, for example. But in Korea, to me, it seems like we have a boundary line here on B, because we got an entrance hole here. So we step inside with shoes on until the area of entrance hole is reached. Well, let me take a quick example in Korean words. 우리가 이렇게 짜장면이나 피자 같은 거 시키면 이런 한국말로 갑자기 하니까 팍팍 귀에 가서 꽂히지 않아요? 하지는 못하겠지만 인터넷 하고 막 노트북 하다가 갑자기 한국말에서 팍 꽂혀가지고 주의가 팍 터지지 않아요? 그게 그 네이티브 랭귀지의 힘인 것 같아요. 유럽에서 한 달을 한국말을 안 하고 산 적이 있었는데 한국말 안 하고 살겠더라고요. 한국 음식 안 먹고도. 근데 그러다가 이제 서울에 가려고 공항에 갔는데, 파리의 드골 공항에 갔는데 어떤 한국 사람들이 한 10m 떨어진 데서 이렇게 한국말로 얘기를 하는데 제가 무슨 책을 읽고 있었거든요. 너무나 재미나서. 그때가 그 알케미스트를 읽고 있었던 것 같아요. 야능금술사. 읽고 있었는데 책을 못 읽겠는 거야. 그 한국말 이렇게 와서 귀에 가서 콱 꽂혀요. 도저히 안 들을래야 안 들을 수가 없어. 네이티브 랭귀지와 세컨드 랭귀지의 차이가 뭔지 아세요? 네이티브 랭귀지는 내가 캐리고 와서 책 읽고 딴짓하다가 엄마가 뭐라고 얘기해. 그래서 엄마가 갑자기 나는 딴 생각하니까 못 들었거든. 엄마가 화내면서 야 너 내가 지금 뭐라고 했어? 그러면은 지금 가서 저 친구 계란사라고 나한테 얘기했잖아. 그러면서 계란사를 간다. 그게 네이티브 랭귀지야. 나는 듣지 않았지만 그 사운드의 이 울림이 몇 초가 지나서도 다시 이거를 리마인드 할 수가 있어요. 그런데 세컨드 랭귀지는 그 순간 집중을 안 하면 완전히 놓쳐. 불가능해요. 이거를 리커버 하는 건 불가능하죠. 그 차이인 것 같아요. 그래서 딴짓을 할 수가 없는 거죠. 이렇게 얘기하니까 지금 막 지금 주위가 흐트러져가지고 갑자기 사람들이 저를 쳐다보죠. 근데 영어로 얘기하니까 신경 안 쓰려면 안 쓸 수 있죠. I just talked about the difference between native language and second language. It was very fun because people left.
피가 돈다. 네, 그 말을 잘 듣는 피가 돈다.
Anyway, there's an entrance hole. 신발을 신고 여기 들어갈 수 있잖아요. 그래서 짜장면을 우리가 시키면 중국집 아저씨가 철가방 들고 와. 그래가지고 짜장면을 여기다 내려놓나요? 그럼 안 되잖아. 여기까지 들어와서 짜장면을 when we order Chinese food, they come into this place inside the house with the delivery bag, and then put down the pizza, 짜장면, whatever here. So this is outside, not inside to us. So when somebody came here and talked to me something, and then we often say, okay, come in, 들어오세요. And then he put up shoes and come into the house. That's inside. But you're still outside here. Any strangers can be allowed here in entrance hall, but not beyond. But in Western countries, when you order pizza or jjajangmyeon, you get the dishes or plates or whatever here. They are not, delivery man is not allowed to enter here. So this is the actual boundary between the inside and outside. So what's the rule that determines the boundary zone of inside and outside in our culture? 무엇이 inside와 outside를 가르는 어떤 기준이 될까요? 우리나라에서. 서양에는 담이잖아요. In Western country, it's a wall, the outer wall or dividing wall or surrounding wall. That's the division point of inside and outside. But in Korea or in Japan, for example, what is it? What is the factor that divides the actual inside and actual outside? What is this line? It's the difference between the floor height. 바닥이 내려간 곳은 outside고요. 우리나라에서. 사람들은 그렇게 생각을 안 하고 그냥 우리 당연하니까 그렇게 살고 있지만 그렇게 인류학적인 많은 책과 그런 생각을 많이 하다 보니까 제가 내린 결론은 뭐냐면 바닥이 낮은 곳은 한국 사람에게 있어서 외부고요. 바깥이고요. 바닥이 높은 곳은 내부예요. When the height of the floor is lower, that is outside to us. And the floor is raised, that is inside. I'll like this argument further. It's a very old picture. He could put up shoes and sitting here. So this is a section of traditional Korean architecture. The height of the raised floor is equivalent, almost equal to the chair or bed, a furniture, I mean. So many people start to think about this wooden structure as a piece of furniture. So this is already a furniture. This is a furniture. It's a bed or a chair, whatever. It's a furniture. So you don't want to step on the dining table with shoes on. You have to remove it. or on the bed. So that's the logic. When it's raised, that's the inside. The inside is like furniture, so it has to be maintained very clean. So the structural division occurs for many centuries. So inside is something elevated, and you have to remove shoes, and you have to sit down. So in traditional Korean architecture, the height of the ceiling is very low, because as soon as you go inside the house, you need to sit down or lie down. So we don't need a very higher ceiling height. In Korean language, for example, 들어간다라는 말 있잖아요. 들어앉다, 들어눕다라는 말이죠. 그건 들어간다 하고 눕다, 혹은 들어간다 하고 앉다라는 말이 결합된 말이잖아요. 그런 두 가지 말이 결합된 그런 언어는 별로 없는 것 같아요, 세상에. 혹은 일어난다라는 말이죠. 일어난다. 그거는 일어나다 하고 나간다가 결합된 말이거든요. 일어난다. 일어나면 반드시 나가야 되는 거였고요. 우리는 들어가면 반드시 앉던지 누워야만 했어요. 그리고 천장보도 낮았죠. 그래서 그런 독특한 말이 이제 우리나라 말에 생겨났죠. 그래서 들어간다는 건 앉는다는 얘기예요. 그래서 앉는다는 거고, 그다음에 sedentary, sitting for a long time, and the space should be clean and dry, and it's a very sacred space. But the outside means it is not elevated. You have to put on your shoes, and you have to stand up, and you have to move your body. And this is a very dirty space and profane. Next slide. Okay, let me maintain my argument. When the space floor is lower, like utility room, 사용거실, and bathroom, even though these spaces are inside the house, these spaces are still outside to us, anthropologically speaking. So 이게 주거 내부에 있지만 여기는 우리한테 외부 공간이에요. 외부 공간이니까 바닥은 낮아야 되고 신발을 신어야 되고 더럽고 지저분한 공간일 수가 있는 거죠. 집 아닌데 집 밖이다. 그게 왜 애초에 그렇게 됐을까? 제가 오늘 강의에서 얘기는 하지 않지만 거기에 대해서 더 깊은 어떤 그런 그 형태학적인 분석을 보고 싶으시면은 그 내년 3월에 홈 컬처라는 그 영국 저널에 그 제 논문 이거를 약간 과학적으로 분석한 그러니까 morphological analysis 분석한 논문이 3월에 나오는 그거를 뭐 아무도 안 보시겠지만 보시면 왜 그런지를 테크니컬하게 그 아날리시스를 이렇게 해서 만드는 게 있어요. 스페이스 신탁스라는 기법을 활용해서 아무튼 그래서 예전에는 다 밖에 있었던 공간이에요. 화장실, 물을 쓰는 모든 공간은 집 밖에 있었다고 예전에 조선시대 그 이전에 그러던 것들이 이 모던 하우징이 되면서 안으로 다 들어왔죠. 이런 공간들이 그러면서 외부라는 속성을 가지고 들어온 거죠. 외부라는 속성은 뭐냐면 바닥이 낮은 거죠. 이거는 우리가 평상이라고 얘기하는 거잖아요. 평상. 이거는 지금 바깥이죠. 바깥이지만 elevated, shoes off, all the requirements satisfies the 평상 space as a inside. 이거는 내부 공간이에요. 신발을 벗고 위에 올라서는 순간 이미 내부 공간이 된 거죠. 요거는 태종대에 있는 거래요. 이렇게 인터넷 찾다 보니까 부산 태종대에 가면 이렇게 바닷가에 바위 위에다 이렇게 평상을 올려놓고 거기서 회랑 소주를 마시면은 맛이 기가 막힌대요. 근데 저 사진을 보니까 회랑 소주가 너무 먹고 싶어 저기 가가지고 저기 꼭 가려고 태종대. 네. 저걸 어떻게 저 바위 틈에 저기 떠있게 만들었는지 저 어떤 그 공학적인 테크놀로지의 수준이 되게 좀 놀랍더라고요. 저기 가능한지. So there goes similar examples. Lower, that's the outside. Heightened or elevated, that is inside. In the typical Korean restaurant, 식당, they prepare two different types of tables. So this is the inside. Or you can eat outside the home, inside the room. When there's dirty things like water or some fire, ashes, the space should be lower. This is the Korean hotel, and this is a Japanese hotel. And this is interesting. In every higher grade hotels in Japan and Korea provide special rooms with the traditional floor seating environment. That's something unexist in different cultures. Every dirty things should be lowered because that belongs to the outside. So this is the very good idea of lowering the most dirty things like that. So this is a very recent modern idea of raising up the dirty spot. So this kind of toilet is disappearing in Korea, but in Japan they still maintain to provide this type of pot. And most of the questions I get from my Western friends after their visit to Japan or Korea is, they ask me, how do you sit here? Which direction do I have to face? That's the general question I get from my Western friends. So they are so confused. Which direction they have to face? In a Japanese hotel, there's a very large theater which provide floor seating rooms like this. Spectacular. So there are many overlaps of activities even in the house in Eastern houses. Well, let's talk about furniture in the Western countries. This is a picture of an island in Highland, the late 19th century, and people are doing washing the cloth. And this is a picture of a Korean women washing clothes in Cheonggyecheon in early 20th century. Can you recognize the difference? They feel very comfortable in a squatting position. Squat, like this, squat. They feel very comfortable. They can do the work with that squatting posture for a long time, many, many hours. They cannot. So they need some device like tables, or they can stand up. Well, some women are just try to get some water here, but rest of the people are just try to stand up using furniture to the same laundry. Well, I told you before the floor was very dirty in Holland Color House. Well, even in Versailles Palace, I think you have already heard about that. Well, there's a toilet here. So there are four sitting toilet sitters here. So I always ask my students, do you know the reason why there are 4 toilets here, not one? Any idea why there are 4? The most common answer I get is, well, it's a group toilet. So in the morning, all the members in the family get up together and do the thing together, facing each other, talk about many interesting things. What a lovely family activity in the morning. That's the general answer I get. The real answer is, in those days, it was not easy to remove the accumulated wastes inside the space. So when one is filled up, you close the door, close the lid, and then use the second one, and then third one and fourth one. While you're using the fourth one, somebody came in and removed all the the waste inside. I think that's the reason. Look at this picture. This is 2층 침대, second story bed. So when there is a very, the space is very limited, they use this type of bed. And there's very limited space. They try to combine piano and bed in a single furniture to save space. That looks very awkward to me because, well, if that space is too tight, we wouldn't use the furniture. We can simply use the blanket directly on the floor. And this is yoga chamber pot. At night, when you feel like urinate, you use the chamber. But the Korean chamber is a small pot, so you need a squatting position to use that. But here, you can simply sit on the chair-like chamber pot. Okay, here's something I mentioned before, that history is hardly edifying, nothing glorious. It started out as a refuge from the filth of the house floor. How many slides? Oh, okay, I'll go very fast. I'll skip this slide. It's a very sociological research, very interesting, but I will skip that. Okay, this is a admiration of upright posture in the West. In the West, beginning from the Greece and Erasmus, also emphasized the man's posture as a standing up. So this is the ideal posture of man in the West. You should not sit down, especially on the floor. You should stand up, because ground is something to overcome. It's a very natural status. So cultural man should stand up or at least use furniture. So all the king's portraits are drawn like this. It's hard to find a king's portrait sitting on a chair. But in Korea, you would have a hard time to find the king standing up like this. We all sit him down on a chair. Having a party in the West means everyone standing up. So people should stand up to have a party. It's more hilarious, right? So this is I took this picture in 2001, and people were drinking on the street with a glass on his hand. So rather than sitting on a table, sitting around the table, they enjoy standing up. So that makes party more flexible and more enjoyable, more convivial. In Korean culture or in Japanese, people has to sit down to have a party. Standing up doesn't necessary to have a party. So when there's a 회식 group dining or drink, so people have to sit down like this. So there comes some deterministic nature raised in this situation. So well, I took this from somebody's blog, and it was very funny because okay, this the company group dining, or it could be the group dining of the friends, whatever. So there's a boss. So he keeps talking alone, and this group is kind of the main, main group, and who has a real power, and they always 아부하다가 뭐죠 영어로? Flatter to the boss. Those people who always follow the boss and try to make a good impression to him, always sit around him. Yeah? And the other groups going farther apart from the boss, they are very minor groups, and they don't care really about what he talks about. Yeah? So this is a very so you read that, it's very funny. They are outsiders. Yeah? And this is the most convenient spot. for the outsiders. So they are not seen from the book, and they can hide visually and talk about their own subject. So that's a very common. So what I want to emphasize is, in Korean culture, we have to sit down to have a party. But the problem is you have to choose where to sit in the beginning. So that makes your destiny at that night very deterministic. So 어쩌다가 되게 싫은 사람이랑 마주 앉게 되면 한 2시간 동안 그 사람이랑 재미없는 대화를 해야 되고요. 좋아하는 사람 옆에 앉고 싶은데 너무 눈치 보이잖아. 막 따라가서 앉으려고 하면. 그런데 한 번 앉는 순간 어쩔 수가 없잖아요. 너무 결정론적이고 운명지향적이야, 그 사람은. 왜 그렇게 운명에 모든 걸 맡겨야 되죠? 근데 서양에서는 서서 이렇게 술잔 들고 있으면 내가 이 사람이랑 말하는 거 싫으면 이렇게 슬쩍 옮겨가면 돼. 되게 쉽게 바꿀 수가 있고, 옆에 있는 나 모르는 다른 그룹과도 얘기가 오고 가면 친구가 될 수 있고, 이렇게 되게 유연하다고요. 그 그룹 간의 이 인터페이스가. 근데 한국은 이 그룹 간의 인터페이스가 되게 똘똘 뭉쳐서 타인이라든지 다른 학교 사람, 다른 지방 사람들 되게 배타적이죠. 그 사람들끼리만 엮이려고 하지만 너무 자기 출신과 무슨 연고와 혈연지연, 학연 이런 것들이 너무 결정적이어서 그 발전을 해치고 있죠. 사실은 이 표가 그런 표였어요. 그래서 이게 Oriental culture, and this is Western culture. P is people, G is group. So every person is very independent, but as a group, they have a very flexible boundary. So different groups can be mixed together easily. But here, in Eastern culture, especially in Korea, a group boundary is very strong. So if you didn't attend KAIST at all, like myself, so you wouldn't feel friendly to me. Yeah? But inside the group, people are very intimate to each other. So they know everything about each other. Too close. Too much close. That's the problem. So thinking about furniture using and the posture of standing up, there is a very good example of an old Western paint. Have you heard about Bruegel? Very famous the civilian painter. This is not a very noble family, but he painted very interesting pictures. And well, I'm going to compare these two pictures in the next slides. Okay, this is called what's the title? S at School. Yeah, this is called S at School. These are the small kids who has not taught enough. So they are in a very natural state, which should be overcome. So they are not cultured at all. Because they are not cultured, they are like animals. So they are sitting on the floor without furniture. Teacher, on the other hand, is sitting on the chair because he is civilized person, educated, already overcome the nature. Here you see there's a horse here. Because even though he is a horse, he has been read much. He studied a lot. So he is standing up. He's not sitting directly on the floor. So there's a division between nature, culture, educated, uneducated. The division between the two. In terms of using furniture. Very interesting painting. There goes again. He's a peddler. 행상, he's a peddler, and he tried to sell some goods and stuff in the town here. So here's the house in the town. So this is a culture, civilization, and this part of the world is nature. So after spending time in the cultural area, now he's going into the woods to move to another town, and he fell asleep. So these monkeys are trying to steal the goods and stuff from the peddler. So this is a natural world which should be overcome, uncivilized world. So there's no chair, bed, whatever, any type of furniture here. So this is a status which should be overcome in the Western culture. So this is the end of my discussion today. Ingold is an anthropologist in UK, and he said Japanese parents are glad to see their children crawling everywhere on all fours. On all fours means 네 발로 기어다녀도 애들이 그 일본이나 우리나라 부모들은 상관없잖아, 막 기어다니고. 그런데 그 서양 사람들은 아기들이 그렇게 네 발로 기어다니는 거를 굉장히 빨리 극복해야 될 굉장히 비문명의 어떤 그 상징이라고 생각해서 어떻게든 세우려고 해요, 애를. 그래서 아주 어렸을 때부터 저런 데다가 앉히고, 뭐 우리나라도 요즘 많이 쓰지만 이렇게 이런 뭐 크레들 같은 거에다가 앉히고, 혹은 어떻게든 일어서기 위해서 보행기에다가 앉히고 이렇게 펜스 같은 걸 둘러가지고 잡고 일어서도록 만들어요, 아주 어렸을 때부터. 그리고 방에 따로 혼자 재우기도 하죠, 독립식. 근데 이제 우리나라나 일본이나 뭐 중국은 잘 모르겠지만 그런 경우에는 애들이 막 기어다니고 네 발로 땅을 비비고 뭐 이런 거에 대해서 그렇게 나쁘게 생각을 하지 않죠. 뭐 애들은 다 그럴 수 있다라고 생각을 하는 거죠. 이제 그 얘기를 팀 인골드라는 인류학자가 얘기를 하고 있는 거고요. 그래서 어떤 the meaning of standing up, using furniture is something that Western people is just maintaining or emphasizing until nowadays. So the floor using culture of Korea and Japan is something we still try to develop. The conclusion part can be the phenotype, the outer shape of Eastern culture has been changed, but the inside, the inner side of the culture is still maintained until nowadays. So in many Korean houses, we still put up shoes, and even though we provide many Western style furniture, many people still prefer to sit directly on the floor. While there is Western furniture, chair, bed, and everything. So there's a division between lower floor and higher floor, and the lower floor means the outside in anthropological terms. And then another interesting phenomenon in Korea is ondol, the warm floor, and maru, the summer's wooden floor, has been spread all over the housing floor in 20th century. So we got a ondol plus maru provided all across the floor. But in Japan, the tatami, which is a strawed floor, is diminishing, unlike the Korean ondol or maru, because the tatami cannot support the Western style food, the furniture, because it'll harm or damage the floor structure. The Eastern Asian activities are overlapping and supporting each other in the housing space rather than categorized and divided. So the general argument today is even though we look the same global citizen in the 20th century, we have many things still remaining in our DNA. And it still influences many aspects of everyday activity or everybody's work views and perspectives. Okay, thank you very much. Any question or comment?
강연 잘 들었습니다. 딴 게 아니라 제가 목요일날 사실 교수님이 하신 비슷한 주제로 수업 전에 발표를 해야 되는데 동서양의 그 인식 차이에서 오는 그 인식의 차이가 오브제를 중심으로 어떤 변화를 줬는지 발표해야 되는데 제가 그 물에 대해서 물이라는 오브제에 대해서 동양은 이 물을 가지고 인공 연못을 만들어서 그러니까 사람과 자연이 하나가 되는 어떤 시도를 했다면 서양 같은 경우에는 분수라는 개념으로 가서 물 그 자체만을 초점을 맞춰서 이렇게 그 조경을 꾸몄다고 해야 되나요? 그런 식으로 이렇게 논리를 진행하고 싶은데 그게 가능한지
그게 무슨
자문을.
뭐 그런 그 백그라운드 이론이 있나요?
그래서 제가 그거에 대해서 자문을 좀 얻고 싶어서.
근데 그렇게 얘기하기는 쉽지는 않을 것 같아요. 왜냐면 물이라는 거는 되게 어떻게 보면 공통적인 요소가 있어요. 서양이나 동양이나. 한 단어로 얘기하면 purification이거든요. 물은 씻는 거니까 이제 정화의 작용이어서 뭐 서양의 성당 같은 데 들어가면 이렇게 물을 찍어서 성수를 바르잖아요. 그게 이제 한 공간에서 다른 공간으로 진입할 때 그 바운더리 존이 되게 dangerous하다고 얘기했잖아요. 그러니까 ambiguous하고 tabu가 있고 그래서 옷을 갈아입든지 문지방을 밟으면 안 되는 tabu가 있든지 혹은 그런 물 같은 걸로 이제 이렇게 목욕제기를 하고 넘어간다든지 그러니까 목욕제기를 할 수 없으니까 어떤 그 정화의 purification의 상징인 거죠. 물을 찍어 바른다는 게. 동양에서도 그 일본 신사나 우리나라 절 같은 데 가면 이렇게 물 같은 게 이렇게 있잖아요. 일본 신사에서는 거기 물인 데서 이렇게 뭐 박수를 2번 치고 그 정화의 작용을 하면서 그 이제 기도를 올린다든지. 그래서 어떻게 보면 되게 비슷한 요소가 있어서 그게 분수냐 아니면 고여있느냐에 따라서 그렇게 다르게 할 수 있는 건 조금
조경적인 측면에서 봤을 때 서양도 그럼 인공호수 같은 걸 많이 이렇게 만들고 했나요?
서양에서 인공호수를 많이 만들었냐고요?
예.
호수는 많이 만들었던 것 같은데요. 이렇게 물을 호수로 따로 끌어들이는 거는 굉장히 그 고대로부터 사실은 식수나 목욕이나 이런 것 때문에 이제 끌어들일 필요가 있었기 때문에 로마 시대에 수도가 있었던 것처럼 그게 어떤 그 기술의 발전이 늦어서 문제지 물을 끌어들이는 이제 그런 시도는 어디서나 했었고 그거를 그냥 우리나라에 어떤 걸 얘기하는 거죠? 연못, 완합지나
예, 그런
것들이요. 더 좀 자료를 찾아봐야 알 것 같은데 지금 언뜻 서양은 그렇고 동양은 이렇다라고 얘기하기에는 조금 저로서는 좀 약간 리스크가 있잖아요.
감사합니다.
도움이 못 됩니다.
한국의 아파트 문화가 시작되면서 어떤 학자는 한국의 아파트 문화가 시작되면서 한국의 전통적인 주거 문화는 사라졌다고 극단적으로 말하는 사람이 있고 혹은 아파트 안에 팻마루 같은 형식의 뒷베란다로 변해서 적용이 되는 면하고 그리고 내부가 마루라던가 인가부스의 특징이 있다. 그래서 한국의 전통 주거 문화가 다만 콘크리트 건물로 바뀐 것 뿐이지 그래도 어느 정도 유지하고 있다는 설도 있는데 교수님의 입장에서는 어떻게 바라보시는지?
주거 문화는 어쩔 수 없이 무슨 모더나이제이션, 인터널라이제이션이 되면서 이제 이렇게 변해가고 있고요. 그래서 왜 그 과거랑 똑같이 산다는 것은 불가능한 게 그거는 우리가 흔히 서구화와 그 모던화를 착각을 하는데 그러니까 우리가 서양을 따라가는 게 아니라 서양도 200~300년 전에 주거하고 지금이랑 완전히 달라요. 완전히 모던화 되는 거를 우리가 같이 추구해 가는 거지 우리가 서양식으로 바뀌는 게 아니죠. 뭐 양변기라든지 수세식 변기라든지 이 모든 것들이 나온 지 뭐 몇백 년이 안 됐어요. 200년 미만일걸요 아마. 그래서 어떤 그 집의 이런 그 공간이죠. 뭐 홀 앤 팔러라든지 이런 것들도 지금 다 변했고 그래서 우리가 뭐 서양 거를 바뀌었다는 것보다는 서양이든 동양이든 다 이렇게 모던화가 되고 그런 그 테크놀로지의 도입 때문에 많이 변모가 되고 있는 것 같아요. 그래서 뭐 철과 콘크리트, 유리 같은 근대 건축의 어떤 요소에 의해서 근대 건축이 만들어지면서 우리나라도 근대화 주택이 됐고 서양도 주택이 됐는데 단지 서양애들이 조금 빨리 한 걸 우리가 늦게 따라갔으니까 서양화라고 생각을 하는데 일단 이제 모던화의 길을 같이 시차를 두고 걸어갔다고 볼 수가 있을 것 같고요. 어쩔 수 없이 재료와 어떤 그 시공 인력과 비용 그다음 모든 어떤 건축 조건, 건축 법규 이런 것들이 바뀌기 때문에 옛날의 삶을 유지한다는 건 굉장히 비경제적이죠. 한옥을 짓는 게 지금 훨씬 비싸니까 공사 단가가 3배, 4배가 비싸거든요. 그래서 공간도 변하고 모든 것들이 변하고 있지만 그래도 굉장히 천천히 변하고 그 안에 남아있는 어떤 한국적인 특질, 아까 얘기한 무슨 뭐 높은 공간, 낮은 공간, 신을 벗고 이런 얘기를 했는데 그런 것들은 어떻게 보면 굉장히 느리게 저 물밑에서 쭉 흘러내려오고 있는 어떤 DNA 같은 그런 어떤 요소가 아닐까. 그래서 극단적으로 이제 아파트 문화는 이제 뭐 서양의 것이고 우리나라 걸 잃어버렸다. 서양의 것이라기보다도 저는 뭐 그렇게 얘기하고 싶어요. 이거는 어떤 그 근대화가 된 거고 서구화가 됐고 근대화가 됐고 그 다음에 뭐 서양 걸 많이 참조를 했지만 이제 그 예전의 건축하고는 이미 많이 달라진 건 사실이고요. 하지만 자세히 들여다보면 각 세계의 각 지역에는 그들만의 어떤 특색이 아직 남아서 그걸 이렇게 변형을 시키고 있는 그 모던화의 어떤 스피드와 방향을 이 밑에 DNA가 이렇게 잡아가지고 다른 쪽으로 가이드해서 그런 것들이 이제 흘러내려가고 있는 명쾌하게 얘기할 수는 없을 것 같아요. 일단 지금. 네, 그러면 하여튼 그 수고 많이 하셨고요. 늦은 시간까지 그 강의를 영어를 많이 썼는데도 불구하고 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다.